How are you guys doing? This is Ryan. Welcome back to the channel. In this week's video, I want to cover the protests that are going on in Cuba right now that have to do with the downturn in the economy, the lack of resources for the Cuban citizens, and the crisis with the coronavirus going on right now. And I really want to touch on how Bitcoin Cash is a solution to this problem of oppression through the communist regime that has been empowered through the Castro family for many years, and now the current president or dictator, Miguel Diaz-Canel. This story kind of hits a little close to home for me, as my grandfather defected from Cuba a long time ago. During the early days of the revolution, my grandfather was a businessman in Cuba. He had a large farm, and the farm actually got up to about 6,000 acres, and his predominant crop was oranges. And at the time, during the 50s, his biggest client was Tropicana, which we all know today. They were a fastly growing company at the time, and they later got purchased by PepsiCo. I always heard about Cuba growing up, and I always heard about what occurred. You know, my grandfather went through a very tragic scenario there where he was relatively wealthy. He controlled over those 6,000 acres with a large business, had enough money to come to the States to get his education, went to the University of Florida, and still went back to the farm, and was very successful. And this wealth was actually built over like the course of a century. My last name is Giffen. That's a Scottish last name. So my Scottish ancestors actually came over to Cuba and to find good soil and to grow their business. And it lasted for about a century, and then that all changed due to an ideological change in the way humans should operate. So not only did my grandfather lose his physical possessions, he also had his bank account seized. So he lost all of his monetary wealth, and that is something that is so important in the way I look at what cryptocurrency offers people. With Bitcoin Cash, no one can touch your wealth. It is non-custodial. You hold your private keys to your money, and that is your money. No one can go into your bank account and take that away. And the reason why, if you watch my channel, if you're finding this video from somewhere else, when I'm talking about Bitcoin Cash and not something like Bitcoin, because what we're seeing with Bitcoin, ticker symbol BTC, it is being pushed on people. It is being mandated for people to use, and it's actually not a very usable solution to use on-chain. It is very expensive to move around. If people in Cuba wanted to send a Bitcoin around, it would cost anywhere from $5 to $50, and I believe Cubans only really make around $40 a month. The last I heard, I had a Cuban friend that worked for our company, and he said that was about the equivalent they made in their native currency, the Cuban peso. So for many people in Cuba, many people in the world, spending $5 to $50 every time you want to move your money around isn't really a feasible option. So what Bitcoin BTC has chosen to do, they've chosen to do things off the main chain. So what you're seeing in El Salvador happen right now is a company called Strike is going to handle all of the payments on the Strike Lightning Network and not on the base layer of Bitcoin, because the people of El Salvador would not be able to use this. And essentially what you're doing on the Lightning Network and with this company called Strike, which is a private corporation, a custodial service, is that you're sending IOUs of a Bitcoin, and at some point in the future you will settle, and then you'll have to pay that fee. But if you can keep everything off chain, you won't have to worry about these fees. But the problem is you're trusting a custodian, and you could end up like my grandfather. My grandfather was trusting a custodian, a Cuban bank, and that Cuban bank was unable to keep his money safe. So the people of El Salvador are trusting a private corporation to keep their money safe. And the problem that's really problematic with it is that a lot of people don't even have access to their Bitcoin keys to their wallet. So they're really just trusting this custodian to do everything. And what's very odd in the whole situation in El Salvador is that it's a mandate. Like, you must use Bitcoin, you must accept it. If someone comes up to you and says, here's Bitcoin, you have to take it as payment. That's not freedom. That's not peer-to-peer electronic cash, a voluntary system. And for someone who has grown up with a family that has had to flee authoritarianism, that's not right. That's not the way humans should interact. And that's why the spirit of freedom is alive in Bitcoin Cash. And I would love to see it spread to the Cuban island. I would love to see the revolution push further. This is the first major protest really since the revolution itself. There was a protest in 1994 that was predominantly in just Havana, and Castro eventually emptied the jails and let people flee out and dealt with it that way. But this time we're seeing the entire country stand up and fight. You can only piss people off so much, and with the downturn in the economy right now, due to many reasons, one of them being the pandemic, you're seeing this happen. You're seeing people finally fight against the oppression. You're not hearing anything from popular socialists in the United States. AOC or Bernie Sanders have nothing to say about this, because this goes against their philosophy. And what you're hearing from the president of Cuba is he's blaming the United States because of the forced embargo on Cuba that has hurt the economy. And I will say there is some truth to this. I do not support the embargo from the United States on Cuba. I think if you want to do business with Cuba, there shouldn't be a central authority like a government saying not to do it or don't travel there. And I don't think the embargo has done much to actually help the people or get the authoritarians out of power. We've had the embargo with Cuba for like 60 years, and it hasn't done anything to end the communist regime. And the blowback has really been towards the citizens, have really been oppressed by it, and it's allowed the Cuban government to say the boogeyman is the United States. This is why we're poor. It's because the United States is why we're poor. And for people who support the embargo, my grandfather was one of them. A lot of the Cubans who lost all their wealth there still hold this grudge and don't want to do anything to support the authoritarian government, have to at least acknowledge that if these authoritarian ideas are so bad, socialism, communism, whatever it is, they're going to fail on their own. Just like good ideas don't require force, bad ideas don't require force either. Bad ideas will fall apart. And I believe that actually the embargo has been an unintended consequence of keeping the authoritarians in power, along with their ability to control the money supply, which is why I think Bitcoin Cash could really help the island. And I'm really for any cryptocurrency. I just think Bitcoin Cash is the most viable to do so. And I think it's important to let people know what Bitcoin Cash is and how it's different from Bitcoin BTC, because it really stands more for freedom, because it's permissionless, it's on-chain, and it's cheap to send, and it works for everyone. Adding to that, you have these 11 million Cubans on an island that are all disarmed. They don't have the ability to bring weaponry to fight a revolution. And it's important to point out why having an armed population is useful, especially when you're oppressed and starving and living under an authoritarian regime. They don't want you to have weapons because they don't want to feel the threat if they don't like the way they're ruling over you. But I'm here to show my support for the people of Cuba. This is really a huge opportunity. It's not going to come easy, but if you can continuously disobey the government, eventually they'll have to give in. And one of the ways to disobey them is by no longer using the peso, using something like Bitcoin Cash. I really believe the people of Cuba can take back power, and I would like to see voluntary efforts of people around the world supporting this and finding ways to support it. I wouldn't necessarily say the US taxpayer and the US government should go in and topple a regime and put in their own puppet master. That has never worked out well in the wars in the Middle East. This needs to come from the people of Cuba, from the streets, to allow the people of Cuba to get their country back. And this is such an amazing time for the people of Cuba to stand up to history and say this is when we had enough. This is when we said this is a failed ideology and we're moving on. And I would love to see support from the Bitcoin Cash community. As a cryptocurrency project that I feel like best resembles freedom, what can we do to help the people of Cuba? Leave any thoughts or suggestions down in the comment section below. Subscribe to the channel for more content and give this video a thumbs up so more people can see it. Also, please feel free to share any of your additional thoughts towards the Cuban protests right now. I know I'll be watching this closely. And just growing up in a Cuban family that lost their wealth to trusting custodian resources, please consider using cryptocurrencies that support non-custodian solutions. Own your money, own your own keys, own something that can't be printed away like Bitcoin Cash. Bitcoin Cash is freedom, and freedom is what people want. I'll see you guys in my next one.